Okay, today we're looking at the subject of empowered by God, a closer look at spiritual power. So in addressing this topic of empowerment, I want to go back to the river illustration I used a few weeks ago. There are two things about this analogy that we need to be clear on. First, we are not seeking a destination on the river. I'll explain that in a moment, upstream or down. The point of the illustration is to highlight the fact that the river flows in but one direction. In the spiritual context, this direction is from the inside out. To be empowered by God, then, is to know that our life can only be transformed from the inside out. Now, most of you probably are not into transforming your whole life at this stage. And so what we really mean by this is to transform any individual experience that we might be going through. We all have issues in life. We're all dealing with something. And we want to learn to be able to transform these on a moment-by-moment basis. I think that's one of the challenges that we have with this, the idea of personal transformation, is that we want to change the whole thing. We want to change everything about ourselves so that we may have a better life. Well, we do want to do that, but we do it one issue at a time. We don't transform ourselves from now on. And that's kind of what we all seem to think we're going to be doing. We'll reach that point of enlightenment where once we're enlightened, then we won't have to deal with the problems that we have in life. But this idea of thinking of this creative life force as like a spiritual river flowing through us, it goes in one direction, just like a regular river. It flows in only one direction. And I talked a couple of weeks ago about you can get in your canoe and you can try to paddle up the river. You can paddle two directions. You can go with the flow or you can try to go against the current. And so much of our life is going against the current. And so what we talked about then, and we'll talk about more today, is that if you are stressing out over something, you're paddling against the current. And what we want to do is learn how to let go and flow with the current. Go with the flow, as we say. And again, I say that as a total cliche that I try to avoid, but I did name one of my talks a couple of weeks ago that gave it that name. But we can say something like that so often that it just doesn't mean anything to us. But we want it to mean something because it is meaningful. We're talking about something that is a principle that we are practicing at this very moment. We're either paddling up the stream or we are flowing with it. And how do you tell the difference if you're laboring, if you're struggling, if you're worried, if you're fearful? You're paddling against the current. And that should be the first signal. Your state of mind, where is it? What are you doing with your faculties? And if you are not at peace with yourself, and many of us will find that we're not at peace with ourselves a lot of times throughout the day, then we're paddling against the current. If we get to where we see that as a signal, as a trigger, what we do is we look at the problem in our life and we try to fix that, we try to respond to it, and we want to. But if we will get in the habit of just seeing this as a red light coming on, I'm struggling with something here, that means I'm paddling against the current. The creative life force flows only in one direction, from the inside out. And I'm stressing out over the fact that I can't fix my life from the outside in. I want to resolve this thing out here so I can be at peace inside. So if we will, first of all, just acknowledge that's what we're doing and that we don't have to do that. There's another way to do it. we can transform that moment, that experience that we're having at that moment. And that's all that's really required. I think it was Emerson that said, if you want to be a great soul today. If you want to be a great soul in the next hour, be a great soul in this moment. What are you doing with your mind faculties right now? This is the question. And it's a difficult question. It's a difficult realization because we're so used to thinking in big chunks of time. What am I going to be doing this week or this day or this month or this year? Rather than this moment. It doesn't seem too valuable. It doesn't seem to really make that much difference what I do with this moment. Because it's just this moment, you know, and I've got another one coming right up. So if I mess this one up, I'll have the next one. But we usually carry over that same attitude into the next moment, the next moment, the next moment. Pretty soon that's what our life is. It's moment after moment of stress and reaction and all of that. So we're looking to transform how we approach each moment. And when we pull it back, we find that we're empowered to do this. We can actually do it. You can actually look at your state of mind right now. If you're in a negative state of mind, you can actually look at that and you can change it. You can say, what can I do right now about this situation? And you say, well, there's not much I can do. Well, there is something you can do. You can let it go. And that's what matters, because if we don't let it go, if we just keep dragging the negative reaction from one moment to the next, then pretty soon our whole life looks that way, and we don't want that. So both our religious and cultural training have programmed us to believe the transformation or the fulfillment that we seek is found upstream. Religion sees the current as a test of faith. Our cultural training says the hard work of paddling will get us to that satisfying place of success. So why would Jesus question the logic of gaining the world at the risk of losing the soul? Did we really come here so we could spend our life paddling upstream? And see, that's, from a religious point of view, that's what I learned, that the earth life is a series of temptations. And guess who's hiding in every shadow and around every corner? Just waiting to tempt us, waiting to test us. But this whole idea is we're born on this planet paddling upstream. Life is a test. And when you think of it in more of a secular way, it's the same thing. We've got to go out and get our education. We've got to find a career. We've got to become successful. And that's what making money is all about. It's about being able to afford an outboard motor to put on our canoe so we can go upstream with no problem. Let's make as much money as possible so we can have peace of mind as we're going upstream. That's why I say that let's not think of our destination as upstream or downstream. Don't think of the river in that way. We're only using the river as an illustration to say that the current flows in but one direction, from the inside out. And so we're in this life, and we are paddling upstream. You know, we're born into a culture that says that's what we are here to do. We're here to struggle. The soul evolutionist does the same thing. You are here in life as a kind of a school, and what happens in school is you go to classes and you take tests. And if you pass the tests, then pass enough of them, you'll graduate. And that's kind of what this soul evolutionist says. If we pass enough of the tests, we won't have to come back to the school. It's the same idea that we're born into a world where we're paddling upstream. That's what we must do. And as I get deeper into this whole thing, I don't think that's what Jesus taught. I think he taught a way that we can actually handle, we can actually deal with. From the more traditional viewpoint, you're never quite sure if that devil's going to get hold of you or not. There's always that chance. And just when you think you've got it made, that's exactly what the devil wants you to think. So you can pay for the insurance. It doesn't mean they're going to pay it off when you need it. We may not make it, in other words. There's always that chance. Although I've conducted, I don't know how many funerals in my life, quite a few. And I don't think I've ever been to one where people thought that the deceased person was going to hell. I don't think I've ever, and I've had a lot of people die in some very interesting ways, everything from suicide to getting killed while inflicting harm on other people. But I don't think the audience actually thought that even that soul would go to hell. So I'm not sure how much we really buy into this. We buy into it for the people we don't know. It's all those other folks out there. But nevertheless, it's an idea that we have been born into, that we are on this earth to paddle upstream, to figure out how to solve that problem. So Jesus said something, and I just came to a different way of thinking of this. I've used this many times, probably in the wrong way. But he says, the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. So I would use this to illustrate the difficulty of meditation, for example. You've all closed your eyes, tried to become still, and find that your mind goes every place but where you want it. And that's stay here in the now moment. So we're saying this is not easy. Well, who in the world wants to follow a more difficult path? This is not consistent with what Jesus taught elsewhere. I think it's a mistranslation, and I'll tell you what I think how we should read it. But first of all, Jesus said, "Come to me, all ye who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Isn't that a message we can respond to? Isn't that what we want to hear? We've been paddling up this river, and we're weary and burdened with that, and we want rest. So why would Jesus in one breath say this and in another say, but the way that I'm teaching is very hard and few find it? Here's what I think he meant. The narrow gate that leads to life is hard to find. It's not hard to live, it's hard to find. And few find it. And the reason it's hard to find is because nothing on earth is our destination. We are here to enjoy this journey. We're trying to solve problems so we can get someplace, so we can paddle upstream and get to that destination. And so we work very hard at doing this. But what if nothing on this earth is our destination? And I do not think it is. I used to think that we came here for a reason. I think we came here for a reason, but not for a thing to do. We came here for the experience of being here and solving the puzzle of living this life in a manner that Jesus taught. That is, free to enjoy the journey. We're not here to arrive at a destination. Nothing that we will accomplish on this earth we're going to take with us. Nothing. What we will take is if we learn the key to enjoying the journey. We will step from this body and we will continue to enjoy the journey, and probably even more so. But we're not here to accomplish something. It doesn't mean that we're just going to drift through life. It doesn't mean that we don't have goals and interests, hobbies, things that we want to pursue. but none of them are why we came. There's not one of them that is the destination that our soul desires, because the soul has no destination on earth. My kingdom is not of this earth. It's not of this world. Neither is yours. You set a goal for yourself. You have a career. You set some objective that you want to achieve. That's a journey. And it's about getting to that place and doing it as stress-free as you possibly can. And every time you find yourself paddling up the stream, you stop yourself and say, I'm going against the flow. See, this is hard to find because we're taught in a completely different way. The narrow gate that leads to life is hard to find. What is it? What is that narrow gate? That you look at your response to whatever you're doing. How are you responding to this thing? Are you stressing out over it? Then you can change that. And few understand this. It's not that it's hard to do, it's that it's hard to find. Because we're all taught exactly the opposite all of our life. That we roll up our sleeves, we go in there and we paddle as hard as we can up that river until we get to whatever destination we're after, but there's no place that we're going to end up. And it's not to say that if we turn our canoe around and let the river carry us, that there's some place downstream that we're going to reach either. There's such a thing as becoming a drifter. And what do we think of drifters? They're not people that accomplish anything. They're not people that do anything. They drift. That's not what we're talking about either. That's why we don't want to use the river to put points on the map of the river upstream or downstream as destinations. We're only using the river to illustrate what's going on in us at this very moment. The creative life force is flowing from the inside out. Quality of our life is determined by the choice we make with this moment. If we're working against life or we're working with life. And that's what we want to look at. That's what I think Jesus was talking about. He was not talking about you've come here to be something great, or you've come here to do something wonderful. And maybe you will do something great and something wonderful. But then the time's going to come when you'll leave this. This is one of the things we see in our near-death research is one of the emotions a lot of people experience is remorse. When they have a near-death experience, they don't want to come back. They don't want to come back to the life they have built. They don't want to come back to the career. They don't want to come back even to the family that they have, because the experience they're having is so freeing and so beautiful. And they do come back and they feel guilty for having those feelings. But you know why they're having those feelings, and you know why they didn't want to come back is because this is not our destination. For some reason, it's an experience we chose to have. And I think I know why we have chosen to do it, because probably not everyone, but a lot of us chose to do it because when we made that choice, we had solved the puzzle. We'd solved the problem. We knew how to do it before we took on the body. But then we're born as this little helpless baby, and we're brainwashed into believing that we have to paddle upstream. And that happens in a lot of ways, and we don't know that it's happening to us. We don't know that we're being reprogrammed. And it's not intentional. It's not that there's this conspiracy, people working to brainwash us to think that life is supposed to be hard. It's just that most people struggle in life in a lot of ways, even the wealthy. I was reading about Silicon Valley, one of the richest parts of the country, and the rampant drug problem, suicide rate, the problems associated with wealth, and the pressure of getting into that position and maintaining it and advancing and so forth. It's or that we get so much wealth that we get bored, And that becomes a problem. I've never had that particular problem, but you could. I could see how somebody could have it because, you fly around the world 50 times. What's 51? It's going to get where you don't really want to do so much of that. But almost every hobby I've ever picked up, it's been that way. You're excited about getting into it, about the potential of that. And pretty soon you do so many of the things that it's not so exciting anymore. Our destination is not on this planet, but we can use these things to solve the puzzle. That's the thing we're looking at. To enjoy the journey means that we have goals, we pursue interests, embark on careers, we make money, we buy houses, we get married, we have children, if we want to. Sometimes we don't. But none of these things represent our purpose for showing up on this planet. We're here to solve this puzzle of living, to engage in all our activities empowered by God. So here we are on this planet. Are we here to paddle up the river, or are we here to learn to enjoy the journey? And it has to be that. And that, I think, is what the whole thing that Jesus taught. You see, the traditional Christian interpretation of who he was and what he represents, it's a paddle up the river scenario. And that is, you accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, go through your life paddling up the river, and you'll reach that kingdom of God eventually. It's up there someplace. I don't think Jesus taught that. I think he taught that we're here and we can enjoy this life. We can be in this life, because I think he was addressing a largely peasant population. And I think people liked him, people responded to him because he was telling them how to be in their life right now in a way that was easier, that made more sense than what they were trying to do. Because, again, the whole Judaism of practicing 600 and some rituals a day so you can remain in good standing with God, that's a lot of paddling. That's an upriver concept. So he was saying to them, that's not how it works. It works from the inside out. And look at how you are doing it. Just, look at how a flower does it, a bird of the air does it. They're not fighting like you are. They're not having the same struggles, the same problems. There's a way to flow with this creative life force that makes this experience better. And you're not here to accomplish to achieve any destination. This is not your home. Our home is spirit. It is spiritual. We're here for a time. And I think a person like Jesus is saying, okay, we're all in this body. How do we live this moment? How do we pass through this experience successfully in a way that is meaningful, in a way that makes sense? What if our objective shifts from reaching a destination to learning how to flow with the current? When we find ourselves plagued by some gnawing concern, can we let go of the negative imagery we hold, knowing the natural flow will carry us to a desirable resolution? In this instant, we cease paddling upstream and let the current carry us to the perfect resolution. So this idea of if our objective shifts from reaching a destination, what do we mean by that? Means that if I solve this problem, then I can rest, then I can be happy. So the destination is to solve the problem. So I paddle upstream. I do what I can to solve the problem so I can be happy. So what if I stop using that as the criteria? We find ourselves plagued by some gnawing concern. We can let go of the negative imagery we hold, knowing the natural flow will carry us to a desirable resolution. So we're not destination oriented. We are oriented toward letting go, toward going with the flow. Does that mean that we will not deal with the situation at hand? No. It means that there will be a solution, but I don't have to paddle like crazy to find it. That's the whole point. The birds of the air are taken care of. The lilies of the field are taken care of. We should do the same thing. A robin does not wake up in the morning thinking of all the problems it will have to solve that day. I'm making a big assumption here. He greets the sun with a song. The day will undoubtedly present him with many problems to solve, but he takes each one as it comes. And at the end of the day, he closes with another song. You see, in this very real sense, that bird is on the same planet. Each one of us is. But there's a difference. That bird does not have the ability to imagine problems, to imagine things. So it wakes up in the morning and it sings with joy. I get up pretty early, and the first thing I hear is the robin. You step outside and, it's still dark, but you'll hear the robin starting to sing. And then at the end of the day, the same thing. It's a beautiful warble. They're warblers. But why don't we do that? Instead of saying, oh God, it's another day, we wake up and sing. But that bird probably has more problems than we do. When you think about it, there's cats. So it comes around our house, there's cats. There's just the whole idea of finding food. And what if that bird has a family to feed? Before it has the family, it has to build a nest. There's all kinds of problems involved in building a house. I built many houses in my life, several houses in my life, and it's one problem after another. But when you observe birds, wildlife, you don't see the stress. They don't seem to carry stress. They seem to be fully alive in each moment. And then they will wake up each day and sing a song, start their day that way, and they close with the same kind of a song. So go out in your yard and find a dandelion. That is not hard in my yard. This humble flower is doing fully what you and I are striving for. It's not paddling upstream or drifting aimlessly down. It is being who and what it is from the inside out. It has solved the problem or the puzzle of how to live a successful life empowered by God. This seems like a simple thing, to go out and meditate on a dandelion. I was listening to a fellow who had a near-death experience. He was a high-powered businessman, and he had this near-death experience. Prior to that, he didn't pay attention to what was going on around him at all. But he said that he and a group of men would go out walking every morning, and he got, after the near-death experience, he was so tuned in to just nature that the group would often find that he was no longer with them. He said, I would just be looking at a wheat field, or I'd be looking at a tree. He said these things would capture my attention in ways I'd never even imagined. That you look at it and you think, that thing is doing what I should be doing. It's totally living its life in the here and now. It's not carrying around a lot of baggage, a lot of judgment, a lot of issues from the past or fears of the future. It's being here now. And so much of our thinking says, well, that's impractical. You can't think that way. Well, we can try it. We can see how that works, starting with our life today. It's working for the dandelion. It's working for the robin. We know that because all you have to do is look at them, and that's what Jesus said to do. They're doing something that we should be doing as well, but we're not doing it because we have this beautiful imagination and we're using it in a total negative way, envisioning all the worst things that can happen. Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. If you'd like to help support this ministry, just click the donate card at the top right-hand corner of your screen. Your financial support means a lot to us. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. To subscribe to this channel, simply click our logo. Thanks again for your interest in Independent Unity, and have a wonderful week.